premier Rockets podcast. It's H-Town Hoops, hosted by Brandon Scott and Adam Spolane.
It is the H-Town Hoops podcast, and we're finally here and able to react to basketball, to actual games. We spent a lot of time over the summer, even over the spring, since the Rockets are not normally playing in the playoffs as of late. We spent a lot of time talking about basketball that we've seen and basketball that we're going to see, but not basketball that we're seeing at the moment. So that is the significance of the preseason opener. The Rockets obviously won the preseason opener against the Indiana Pacers 122-103 on, what was that, Tuesday night? But look, the significance of it, forget the win, it's just that we actually have basketball to talk about and react to and to watch. So here's to bringing back basketball. Adam, you were in the building. You were actually at Toyota Center for this game, to my understanding anyway, right? Yes. You've basically been at every game for the most part. Forever. So tell me, man, what were your impressions of this game? I know watching, I felt like I was watching a better basketball product just in the moment, but I wasn't like overwhelmed, like I wasn't like superly impressed by anything in particular. So I am interested in what your takeaways were from this game.
I mean, do we really have basketball to react to? I mean, I try to be interested in the preseason. It's difficult. It's really hard. The games are just so choppy and there's no flow to them at all. You look just last night, you had, I think, through three quarters, it was 40 fouls and 52 free throws. So it's really hard to get a feel for a whole lot. The thing that I was looking for the most was just how Ime Udoka kind of worked his rotations, because the plan was everybody was supposed to be available. That turned out to not be the case. Jeff Green didn't play. Reggie Bullock didn't play. And then Dillon Brooks was ejected after 4.5 minutes. So you didn't get a great look at what rotations would be. You did see them small.
Did you feel like, and not to interrupt you, did you feel like that threw off the rotations, like not just because you're going to have injuries sometimes, but the fact that Dillon Brooks specifically would be out way before you would expect to make a substitution, that I feel like that might have thrown things off. Like, I'm not sure if Tari Eason or whoever it was that came in for, I think that's who it was that came in for Dillon Brooks. I'm not sure that that's exactly what we would expect the first, and maybe it is, but it's hard to know. That is what I thought.
Yeah, I asked Ime Udoka that very question, and he said no, it really had no impact. I don't know if I totally believe that, just because you wanted to probably see that five on the floor together. I think you might have wanted to see, as guys, checked in and out, who would be, for me, I wanted to see what things would look like, who Dillon Brooks would be on the floor with once they did start to go to the bench. You wanted to see at what point would they actually take Dillon Brooks out of the game, because just the way that they did it yesterday, it was Jalen Green who went to the bench first. Amen Thompson checked in for him. So you had Thompson and Van Vliet playing together. Then Van Vliet would check in for Green, and then you had Green and Thompson playing together. So that was a lot of the stuff that I was looking for. Like I said, Ime Udoka did say that they would go small with Jabari Smith Jr. playing center. They did that a little bit. They also, I think they had a unit where Eason was playing center, which was something that I wanted. Who else do they feel comfortable with at center? I think that they talked about Tate playing some center, and that's kind of getting back to what he did when he first got to the NBA. So all in all, you don't take a lot out of it because it's summer league and the games are they're officiated differently and they're officiated very closely. So you don't get a whole lot of flow. But I think it was a good first day for them. They played with effort, which I think is important. And that was one of the things that Ime Udoka said that he wanted to see. And that's one of the things that has kind of carried over from training camp. I will, if you want to get into some basketball stuff, the defense is obviously going to be something that we talk about quite a bit over the course of the season. Ime Udoka said they are trying to avoid 30-point quarters. They gave up 31 in the first quarter. He was not happy about that. And then he rattled off 3 3-pointers where they simply just went under screens. And that's kind of the attention to detail where they have to get better. The good thing, that's an easy fix. Like just knowing the scouting report, knowing that, hey, it's Buddy Hield, you probably shouldn't go under the screen. That's something that, you should be able to get better at. So I think all in all, it's a good first day. It's a good first step for them. You saw some good things. You saw some things that need to improve, but I think you'll take that.
I would say if that's one of the main criticisms or one of the things that stood out about it, if it's maybe not being on your right defensive assignments or exactly playing the way that you're supposed to defensively. I think that it's not a coincidence that it would happen that way with Dillon Brooks being out of the game 5 minutes into the game. Like, I do wonder if it's better if your, I would say, unquestioned best defensive player is out there playing, and obviously he's one of the veteran presences that you brought in. We could talk about Dillon Brooks maybe later, have some fun with that, but from the basketball standpoint, like I feel like if you're going to have defensive critiques, you have to consider that the best defensive player and the guy that they brought in to be that guy wasn't out there. So it will be worth watching and monitoring how different does it look once he's out there, if they're doing some of those things a little bit better.
I see what you're saying. I don't really agree with that, though, just because that's a scouting report thing. And just with the way that you're going to play, you're going to get matched up on Buddy Hield. Everybody 1 through 5 at some point is going to get matched on a Buddy Hield at some point. You got to know that you can't go under that screen. So it doesn't matter if it's Dillon Brooks defending him. It doesn't matter if it's Amin Thompson or Jayshawn Tate or whoever. Like, it's Buddy Hield. You can't go under the screen. So to me, that's just not knowing the personnel of the team that you're playing. And again, this is a young group, so maybe you aren't totally aware that, hey, that's Buddy Hield. Maybe you should, snuggle up to him.
And I think that's what I was getting at about the veteran part, though. Like, having and obviously
knows that, hey, I can't go under this.
Yeah, so like the first time that happens, Dillon Brooks has obviously the presence and the equity built up, the reputation built up to say, hey, don't do that again, and maybe it doesn't happen again, or maybe they tighten things up after that moment and kind of start to learn some things with him out there. But you are right, like you should actually know that, like, if we're being honest about it, you shouldn't need Dillon Brooks to tell you that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And it's usually up on the whiteboard before the game. You have every player listed, and then you say hard close, short close, medium close, or whatever. And so you got to know, like, hey, if it's, this is a hard close or whatever they call it, then that's a guy that you have to be pressed up on, when he's getting screened. So again, that's nitpicking, but those are the little things that cost you games. That's giving away essentially 9 points because you're going under screens on whoever. And so you can't, those are the sort of things that you can't do. And those are the sort of things that get you beat. It is a small thing, but it turns out to be a big thing once you get into, actual games. So, it's a little thing. It's something that to me can be pretty easily cleaned up, but that's why it's really important to know the team that you're playing. And that's why you get scouting reports. That's why you watch video. That's why you see stats, because that gives you an idea of who you're playing. And you need to be aware of those guys when they're on the floor. So it's the fact that they defensively, they improved throughout the night. And I think they held Indiana under 30 points in every quarter after the first. I think they might've even held them under 25 after every quarter after the first. That's a positive. And I think did they hold them under 100 for the game? Let me see it was 31 in the first quarter, 24, 25, 19. Like, you'll take that. That's a good defensive night. Holding anyone in the NBA under 100 points is a really good defensive night. You just had that 31 in there in the first quarter when all the starters were playing, or at least most of the starters were playing. So, again, it's a small thing that should be pretty easy to clean up.
So on the Rockets side, there was nobody whose numbers like were eye popping or like just overwhelmed you again. But, if you look at the numbers, they shot it okay, like 40% from three. Not bad. And also maybe not what you would expect necessarily from this Rockets team, given that it's preseason and it's choppy, like we've mentioned, and it's hard to really get a good beat on what you're seeing, because what you're seeing in preseason is not what you're ultimately going to see in the regular season. They got so much to kind of put together. Who did stand out to you in this game?
Well, on the threes, they didn't take very many.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to know, and I haven't gotten to this yet, but do they have a target for how many threes they want to take? Because they only took 25 last night. And to me, in 2023, 2024, it's hard for me to sit there and say, you know what, if you're getting 25 threes up a game, that's good. That's a good number. Because I don't think it is. I think that you need to. I think that you're putting a ceiling on your offense when that's the case. And, they made 40% of them yesterday. They made 10. A little bit concerning that the guys that took the most, or at least of the starters that took the most, VanVleet and Green combined for 2 for 10. Again, that's a small thing.
Yeah.
Green was 1 of 5 from the free throw line, which I kind of noticed. You didn't really notice it as was happening, but you saw it just like within the stats. I guess Cam Whitmore did stand out as a guy who they're not going to ever have to convince him to shoot. And I think that we knew that in Summer League. I think you got a pretty good view of it in Summer League. But seeing him on the floor with like the actual NBA team, he was not shy about firing them up. I mean, he had 5 shots up within the first 5 minutes that he played. He finished with 10 field goal attempts. He took 4 threes. He made 3 of them. So I think that was a really a positive sign. But yeah, other than that, I don't think that there was anything that really. I thought Jabari Smith did have his moments where he looked really good and showed that he carried over some of the Summer League stuff. Jalen Green looked as explosive as he ever has before. Alperen Şengün made the only 3 that he took. And one of the things that Ime Udoka brought up post-game was that he passed up a couple looks. And that's one of those things that they don't want him to do. They want him to take that shot because if they're not guarding you out there, taking that shot is better than just driving into traffic and trying to drive and kick when there's already guys in the lane. So, his evolution of just taking that shot when it's there, I think it's going to be really important, and it will change the way that teams defend him.
Yeah, it is maddening watching him do the pump fake. Like, I like that he's got all of these moves, and they're entertaining to watch. He's a fun player to watch. We know that. But when he does the pump fake and there's nobody there to pump fake, or nobody is there like actually contesting the shot, or the fact that he doesn't take the shot that he's pump faking, everybody's like, hey, you don't shoot that shot. Why are you pump faking? Like, you got to actually start shooting it and actually convince some people. On your point about the threes, it is worth noting, like, the Rockets shot it well. They shot a nice percentage, 40% from 3, made 10 of the 25 that they took. But the team that lost and shot it horribly from 3, like Indiana shot it horribly. They were under 24% from 3, but they took 42. So, like, speaking to your point of modern NBA basketball strategy, that's an interesting question that you point out. For whatever reason, the 25 number did not stick out to me, but you go over, look at the other team, and you think about it, and you're like, they shot 42. It's now, I guess, they're losing or whatever, but it is customary to shoot more than 25, you would think. So I am interested to see how that's going to play out. Cam Whitmore, though, you mentioned, look, I know this is where you and I have been on opposite sides. It seems like I have the more measured approach of just let the rookies kind of get acclimated and get accustomed to what NBA basketball actually is, which is the reasonable take. But, man, when I watch Cam Whitmore, I'm going to tell you this, man. I watched this game and was a bit underwhelmed by just, like, not really feeling like I was I just wasn't super entertained by the game, to be honest with you. I just wasn't. And maybe that's because it is preseason basketball.
Well, but because it was a free throw contest. That's
why.
It
was. Yeah, that could be it. That could be it. But the one player from a Rocket standpoint, the one player that did catch my attention was Cam Whitmore. And I feel like that's it. Everything that you said about, him just having kind of this relentless attitude of like, hey, man, I'm going to go put the ball in the bucket. That's the name of the game. That's what I'm going to go do when I get out here. There is something about him where it feels like, hey, this is the youngest player on the team, I believe. Yeah, he's 19? This is the youngest guy that you got, but it feels like he's going to, at some point, really play his way onto the court. Like that's what I got. Like, not early, but eventually I could see, just based off of the kind of just the raw ability, and if they can kind of harness that, like reel it in a little bit and have him play within what they're trying to do, I could see himself not necessarily always forever being the 9th, 10th guy, which is probably what he is now. And
Udoka brought up his versatility after last night's game, and that he's somebody they feel like could play the 2 through 4. So when you have his size and you have that sort of versatility, then that gives you more opportunities to get on the floor, especially when you're not healthy. That was, again, I really was interested to see how the minutes would be handed out to the guards. But not having Reggie Bullock kind of, ruined that. And so, they brought in Reggie Bullock late. How many minutes do they see him getting? It feels like he's going to be in the rotation. I wanted to see who's going to be the first guy off the bench. And like you brought up, it was Eason, but was that just because Dillon Brooks got ejected? Like on a normal night, who's going to be first off the bench? And so we didn't get to see that yet. And we'll have to wait and see if they play with a full deck when they play against New Orleans. What is it? In a couple of days? Is tomorrow, the 12th? Is that right?
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday
So,
the 12th.
So we'll have to see if they play with a full deck for that game. Obviously, they're not going to play everybody for all 5 of these preseason games. It's not like you're going to see Fred VanVleet play in all 5. Dillon Brooks was not going to play in all 5 anyways, according to Ime Udoka. So maybe yesterday turned out to be one of those games that he is just not going to appear in. So yeah, that really to me is what matters for preseason, at least with a new staff, because that's when you start to figure out the pecking order. And I can't remember if I brought this up to you before, but I think we all thought that Josh Christopher going into last year would have a big role on last year's team, and that he was a guy who exceeded expectations as a rookie. You thought, okay, big things coming up for him in year 2. And then you go to that first preseason game and he is the 6th or 7th man off the bench. And then that's when you kind of knew, okay, they might not be quite as high on Josh Christopher as we thought they were. Josh Christopher is not in the rotation to start the season, and then he gets traded, obviously, once the season ends. So you get a good feel, I think, for how the staff feels about the guys that they have, just based off of the minutes that you're giving out in preseason. And I will bring this up. You look at the first half minutes last night, Jayshawn Tate played 11. Jayshawn Tate was one of the more used guys off the bench. And, that doesn't count Eason, whose probably minutes were inflated because of the Brooks ejection. But I think early on, you're going to see Jayshawn Tate's going to play a lot more than maybe a lot of people anticipated.
Yeah, since you mentioned him, Jayshawn Tate, it really feels like there's an opportunity there for him to be, I don't want to say effectively their backup center, but that's something that I am keeping an eye on. Like how much when they want to play some small ball, or when if they're giving Şengün a breather or whatever it is, like how much. I know they signed Jock Landale, but will they end up liking Jayshawn Tate more in that spot because he's got like the strength and the sort of the basketball IQ to play whatever position, but then also like the actual versatility to do it. So like I am curious about that. Like where does he fall into the rotation? You mentioned how many minutes he played, but how exactly they want to use him is what I'm most interested in.
Well, I brought up specifically with Udoka, like, do you plan on having either Şengün or Landale on the floor at all times? Do you plan on having a traditional center on the floor at all times? And he said no. He said that you're going to see Jabari Smith play some center, and obviously we saw that in the game last night. And then I brought up, okay, well, and then he even brought up Boban, which I don't think that would happen in any sort of an important situation. But then I asked him, okay, well, does Eason fit into that spot as, possibly getting minutes at the 5? And Udoka's response was, well, they had a lineup in practice or during the scrimmage where it was Tate and Eason as the 2 bigs, playing the 4 or the 5, and it was Tate who wound up, defending the 5. So I think that the thing that matters, and Udoka used the word interchangeable multiple times, and I think that's the big thing, is that they want versatility. They want guys, and that's just kind of the way the modern game is now. They want guys who can guard 1 through 5, and that's what Tate is able to do. Tate might be short, but he can guard anyone 1 through 5, and he can bang with bigs. He can hang with guards.
He's strong as hell. He's strong as hell, man. He is one of those people. There are people like this that are. You ever see it? This happens in football sometimes. Like Micah Parsons is one of these people where you're like, man, that guy is way stronger than he looks, and not that he doesn't look strong, but he's. There are people that like just play up. Their strength just plays up a weight class, and he's one of those dudes.
Well, that's what got him on the floor to begin with, was just that versatility. And he's only got, I think people have forgotten about him because he missed so much time last year, and people sour on him because the shooting isn't always there. But he can do so many things for you on the floor. And he can guard anyone 1 through 5. He can put the ball on the floor. He can make plays for others. He can finish at the rim. I mean, he's a solid player. And it's pretty obvious to tell that he's a guy that the new coaching staff has really started to fall in love with, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too, because I saw some Jayshawn Tate hate on a couple of plays that didn't go great. online, and I'm like, man, this is going to be one of the guys that fans irrationally dislike because they want younger guys to play, and they're going to be like, what's Jay Tate getting these minutes for? But I agree with you, man. He had some value. I'm gonna say this though. I think I figured out why I was underwhelmed, why I wasn't excited about this game. It wasn't just because it was a free throw contest and it was preseason choppy basketball. And maybe what I'm about to say was a byproduct of it being preseason choppy basketball. But the thing that stood out to me was how much the guards did not stand out. Like, I guess that's what I was so underwhelmed by, because Fred VanVleet, we mentioned earlier that Dillon Brooks was ejected 5 minutes into the game. But Fred VanVleet was the biggest signing. And like, look, this is not sky is falling type of stuff off of one preseason game. But I guess it did stand out to me that those two guys were unremarkable in this particular game. Didn't shoot it particularly well. You mentioned they were a combined 2 for 10 from three, and it looks like a combined 8 for 23 from the field. 10 points for Fred VanVleet and 11 for Jalen Green. It was just okay, they're there. It didn't feel, I didn't feel anything, I guess was the thing about it. What did you think about watching those two?
I know what you're saying, and VanVleet wasn't exactly an efficient scorer last year, and we've talked about Jalen Green's struggles just with his efficiency. But there's one number that I want to point out. Okay. Turnovers. They played a choppy preseason game, and they finished with 9 turnovers, compared to Indiana, who finished with 18. And I'm trying to find it. I'm hoping I can find the game book here somewhere. But 9 turnovers in a preseason game seems awfully low. And so the fact that they were able to do that, I want to see what the turnovers were for the first 3 quarters, and you're going to hear something probably here in a second.
Turnovers has been a problem, obviously, for the Rockets the last.
Okay, see?
Yeah. So it was noted on the broadcast, perhaps, that they did not turn the ball over a lot in this victory. And
no, I was trying to pull up the game book, and I went into the NBA.com thing, and they have the automatic video. But of course, they don't have the game book. They don't have all 3 quarters. So never mind. So much for that. But again,
Tracy, tomorrow, any of y'all, if y'all are watching, man, send us that game book, man. Let's get those. Let's make sure we get to that. They probably do. They probably do.
But again, that's one of the big things that I think that you get to take away is that, hey, they went through a preseason game where you play all these guys. You have all these guys who are playing on the floor with each other really for the first time in a game situation, and you only had 9 turnovers. I mean, they rarely finished with, single-digit turnovers last year during the regular season. And so that's where I think the value of somebody like VanVleet comes in, where he's got the ball a lot in his 25 minutes or whatever it was. He only had the 4 assists, but he also only turned it over once. And so if you can get, a 4-to-1 turnover rate, with your point guard this year, I think that would be very helpful, because again, it limits a lot. It just helps your defense. Your defense is going to be in a much better position if you aren't turning the ball over the way that they have over the last couple of years. So for me, the box score numbers for VanVleet don't look great. Absolutely. You're right about that. But the fact that they only had 9 turnovers, I think, is really important.
Fair enough. So we can end it on the Dillon Brooks thing. Maybe you can be the tiebreaker for me. Our mutual friend and colleague Sean Bajani and I disagree on whether Dillon Brooks should have been tossed for this particular offense early on in the game, where he's trying to fight through a screen, and let's just call it what it is. Nut checks a guy as he's trying to fight through a screen. I thought it was justified. Now, look, in this dynamic between you and I on this podcast, you are the rational, don't care about the results of the game guy, and that is valuable to have. I'm the one that is all in and want the Rockets to win every game. I admit to that, because it's documented far before I was ever doing a podcast or in media. So anybody that knows me would know it. But I'm willing to be objective about a thing and call a spade a spade. And I was not a fan of that move, and was in support of the player who plays for the team that I root for being ejected in that moment. I have no respect or love for moments like that. Do not approve of it. Sean Bajani thought it was a kind of a BS call. I know Ryan Hollins on the broadcast thought it was a BS call. Where do you sit on this moment, and what does it say about Dillon Brooks's early tenure with the Rockets that he would be ejected 5 minutes into it?
He absolutely should have been ejected. I saw that play as it was unwinding in front of me, and it looked like to me it was a closed fist, and he cocked back and took the shot, and
he pushed the guy in the nuts, man. He did. He did.
And Mitchell Irvin saw it, and Mitchell Irvin blew the whistle and did the twirl to immediately say that he was going to review it. And it was pretty obvious once that happened that that was going to be a flagrant too. Is some of it reputation? Probably, but that's on Dillon Brooks. You know, Dillon Brooks has the reputation. He's the one who has to be able to dispel that reputation. And so it was pretty obvious that that was going to be a flagrant too. As soon as they went to the monitor, I saw it. It looked bad just as live, and then you see the replay. So I thought that that was probably the right decision. And hey, I give Dillon Brooks credit though. You know, he got ejected probably, I don't know, it was probably like 7:20 when that happened. He stuck around more than 2.5 hours to do media. You know, I figured that you get ejected in a preseason game, you might as well just go home. Like, you're already paying the fine. You might as well just go home and enjoy yourself. But no, he stuck around and he offered to do media. Like, he was waiting and he asked Rockets PR, "Hey, do you need me tonight?" And they're like, "Yeah, we do." And so there you go. So that's, I give him credit for, you know, sticking around and explaining himself. But yeah, I thought that was absolutely the right call.
Yeah, man, I can't support these things. I'm going to support the team to a certain degree, but I'm also going to call a spade whenever something that is absurd happens. I will not be blinded by any biases. That was ridiculous. Yeah. Sorry, Rockets fans. Look, I know it's going to be the thing to do now. When a guy who comes from another team used to do things that you hate, and you hated him when he did those things, but he comes on your team and he does those same things that you hate, but now you like him. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to be that guy at all, just for the record, just so everybody knows that.
And something tells me it's not the last time that's going to happen.
5 minutes into the tenure, man.
Not even 5 minutes. 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
All right, man. Look, Rockets got the Pelicans on Thursday night. We'll come back later on in the week, talk a little bit more. I want to talk some about Jabari Smith, too, because he had some moments, and I'm just really curious about what kind of season he's going to have because, look, it wasn't always great last year, but like a lot of the recent stuff looks really good. So that's something that we can get into the next episode. Again, Rockets on Thursday against the Pelicans on the road. That one is. And we'll come back later on in the week to chop it up. That's Adam Spolane. I am Brandon Scott. Austin Mendez is handling this thing for us behind the scenes, producing this bad boy. Make sure that you are subscribed, you rate, you review, and tell a friend.